Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to the 3 tools of a life-giving education. I'm so excited to talk to you today about these amazing tools that we have for free. Charlotte Mason said, education is an atmosphere and a discipline in a life. More important than the curriculum you're using, that's just one of the tools. Any resource you use can be shaped and guided according to these 3 tools to give your children a life-giving education. Before we dive into today's talk, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Julie Ross. I'm the creator of the Charlotte Mason curriculum, A Gentle Feast. I'm a homeschool veteran of over 20 years. I have 5 kiddos. One is graduated recently from college, and then the other will be a senior in college in neuroscience next year. And then I have 3 teenagers that I'm still homeschooling. So I've been homeschooling for a while. Before that, I was a public school educator and I helped start a private Christian school. So I've been in the educational space for about 30 years now. And I'm also a certified Christian life coach. So I'm going to bring in all my experience as a teacher, as a homeschool mom, as a coach, and bring that all in and hopefully give you a really practical look at how these 3 tools can help transform your homeschool. So let's start off with the first one. Education is an atmosphere. What in the world does that even mean? That seems so bizarre. Atmosphere? What does it have to do? How is that a tool to help guide our education? I would say this is, in fact, one of the most, if not the most important tool. Charlotte Mason said, therefore, we are limited to 3 educational instruments: the atmosphere of environment, the discipline of habit, and the presentation of living ideas. Going back again to the motto, education is an atmosphere, discipline, and a life. So what are we talking about when we're talking about the atmosphere of your home or the home environment? This is from a Parents Review article. That's the magazine that Charlotte Mason edited. And this author wrote, there are many important aspects of home life, from first training to highest education, but there is nothing in the way of direct teaching that will ever have so wide and lasting an effect as the atmosphere of home. And the gravest thought concerning this is that in this instant, there's nothing to learn and nothing to teach. The atmosphere emanates from ourselves as the parents. It literally is ourselves. Our children live in it and breathe it. And what we are is thus incorporated into them. There is no pretense here or possibility of evasion. We may deceive ourselves. In the long run, we never deceive our children. The spirit of home lives and what is more, home atmosphere is accentuated in them. Atmosphere is much more than teaching and infinitely more than talk. And when I first read this quote, I was unbelievably convicted because the atmosphere of my home at the time was not what I wanted. It was not what I wanted my homeschool to be like. I felt like I was a drill sergeant, constantly giving out orders, constantly wondering, like, why is this not done? This was supposed to be done 10 minutes ago. Everybody get in the car. We got to go to this. And we are just hurry, 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 stress, 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 stress. And I was like, this isn't why I homeschooled. This isn't the atmosphere I want to create, because Charlotte Mason is saying here, this atmosphere that you might not even realize is what is going on in your home is going to have such a lasting effect on your children. I wanted my children to feel like school and learning was just part of life. And it was this beautiful atmosphere. I wanted us to have deep connections. I wanted my kids to be curious. I wanted them to have time to be creative. And I realized that by me being stressed out all the time, I was actually hurting my children and creating an atmosphere of our home that was not conducive to learning. And so if this quote really convicts you as well, I have some hope. So basically what she's saying is that education is an atmosphere. Our children are breathing it. We can't see it, right? And that these become the ideas which rule their lives. They're getting this from us. So we are the thermostats of our homes. We're setting the temperature. We are either making it really hot, really stressful, really high pressure environment, or we can make the atmosphere of our home peaceful, joyous. Isn't that what we all want, right? So what words would you use to describe the current atmosphere of your home? This might be something you've never even thought of before, because before I read Charlotte Mason's teaching, all I was thinking about was like our to-do list and am I choosing the right curriculum and what does our schedule look like? and never considered how I was showing up and how that was affecting the temperature of our home. What words would you use to describe the atmosphere of your home? And I want you to think about if you've ever had these thoughts in your homeschool. We are so far behind. My child is so difficult. It shouldn't be this hard. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to mess up my child. We are constantly butting heads about school. My child is not working up to their potential. I'm overwhelmed. Have you ever had any of these thoughts? I'm guessing most of us who are listening to this have. I know I have had all of those. That's why I wrote them down. Is if we want to change the atmosphere of our home, we have to be willing to get really honest with ourselves, be willing to pause and to ask ourselves, what am I thinking about my homeschool on a regular basis? When I read these words to you, how does that make you feel? For me, I feel like I have a weight like right here, like I can't breathe. I feel shame, guilt. You might feel afraid, discouraged, disappointed. And when we have these feelings, which are coming from what we're continually telling ourselves, our continual thoughts and stories, and we have these feelings, it affects the way that we show up. And we're not showing up as our most calm, peaceful, loving selves. And that's creating an atmosphere that we don't want. So, in order to create the atmosphere that we do want, we have to look at taking our thoughts captive and by telling ourselves a different story. Charlotte Mason put it this way: let not the nervous, anxious, worried mother think this easy, happy relation with her children is for her. She may be the best mother in the world, but the thing that her children will get from her in these moods is a touch of her nervousness, most catching of complaints. She will find them fractious, rebellious, unmanageable, and will be slow to realize that it is her fault, not the fault of her act, but of her state. So not the fault of the actions, even though those do have such a great effect, but it's coming from your state, your thoughts. What are you feeling on a regular basis? And are your children catching that? I used to think my children complain all the time. And then I realized, oh, I'm the one complaining all the time. Why is it taking you so long to do that? That should have been finished already. I can't believe you don't understand that. Why am I always having to come back up after you and clean up? And then I wondered why they had bad attitudes, right? I had to turn the mirror around and look at myself and say, what am I producing in this atmosphere? How am I showing up? And like I said, we can focus on our actions and be like, I just need to respond in anger less. I just need to respond with a more gentle voice. Yes, that's all true. But we can't just will ourselves to change our action without changing our state, without changing the thoughts that we're thinking on a regular basis. So change your thoughts and change the atmosphere of your home. It sounds easier. Really, it sounds a lot easier than it actually is. But when you get into the practice of it, most of us don't even know what we're thinking ever. We just live our lives on autopilots. We're just always in reaction mode. So taking the time to pause and say, what do I actually think on a regular basis? What am I telling myself about myself as a homeschool mom or about our homeschool or about my kids? And how is that affecting my mood and then my actions? So how do we change our thoughts? So first of all, be mindful throughout the day. Start to take notice, which means you actually have to have margin in your day to pause. Think on purpose. Tell yourself what you're going to think instead. And I'll give you some hints for that in a second. And then start to find the good. Our brains are naturally wired to keep us safe. So they will find all the things that are wrong. If I said, what's not working in your homeschool? You probably could tell me 10 things. And if I said, how have you been successful in your homeschool this year? That might be a little harder for you to think of something because our brains naturally look for what's wrong to keep us safe. And so your brain is doing that all day long. It's looking for all this evidence and all these things that are wrong. We need to train it to start finding the good. That means starting to celebrate the small things. Oh my goodness, my son just shared his pencil with his sister. Oh my goodness, like that read aloud, that was so impactful. oh my goodness, like we went on a nature walk and like nobody got hurt. Start to have gratitude for those small things, and it will change the way your brain is seeing things that are already there. You're already doing good things. Your brain's just naturally filtering them out, trying to find the things that are wrong. So let's go back to this telling your brain what to think on purpose. We're going to be intentional here. If we're intentional about the atmosphere that we want to create in our home, we have to be intentional with what thoughts we're telling ourselves. So, telling yourself what to think on purpose. Here are some thoughts you might want to try on and see how they fit, and start repeating these to yourself. You can journal about them. You could put them on a Post-it note. You can embroider them on a pillow, whatever works for you to start to train your brain to think differently. So I am the perfect person to homeschool my children. I am on a journey and progressing at the perfect pace. I respond with patience, trusting that all things are working for good. I'm grateful to be homeschooling my children. Good things happen every day in our home. I have control over my thoughts, feelings, and energy. I am present and focused during our homeschooling. Our days are full of beauty, laughter, and rich ideas. I will not fear because I work in cooperation with the divine teacher. Mistakes are an opportunity to learn and grow. I am becoming better each day. So come up with your own if these don't really resonate with you. What are some truths? They might not always feel true. Do I always feel like I'm the perfect person to homeschool my children? Absolutely not. But is that true? Yes. Write those things down and start to tell yourself these stories instead. Start to change your thoughts and see if that affects the atmosphere of your home and what you are working on. Work on yourself, put on your own oxygen mask, train your brain to start to think differently so that you can show up as your highest, most loving, most calm, most peaceful, most engaged, most curious, most playful self, and see how that changes the atmosphere of your home. All right, moving on, Charlotte Mason said, education is a discipline. By education as a discipline, we mean the discipline of habits, definitely formed and thoughtfully, whether habits of mind or body. So the word discipline, you might think of something else, but what Charlotte Mason is referring to are the habits. We have to discipline ourselves to do things on a regular basis. The more we do something, the more neural pathways it makes in our brains, and then it becomes a habit. It's not something we have to think about. One of the habits that's really important to foster, is the habit of attention. Charlotte Mason talks about how important that is. We need to have the habit of attention so that we can be focused and really engaged on what we're learning. So this comes from her work, A Philosophy of Education. Another misconception we have concerns attention. We think that to capture child's feeble attention with persuasion, dramatic presentations, pictures, and visual models. But the fact is, a teacher who succeeds depends on his charismatic personality is merely an actor who belongs on a stage. Okay, so this takes the pressure off you. You don't need a bunch of props, games, videos to make every lesson fun in order to gain your child's attention. We now know that attention is not one faculty of the brain, and it's not a definable power of the mind. It's the ability to turn on that power and concentrate. We have that attention there. Can you turn it on when you need to? By capturing a child's attention with gimmicks, we waste our time. The ability to focus the attention is already there in the child as much as he needs. It's like a forceful river, just waiting to obey the child's own authority to turn it on. Yes, it's capable of stubbornly resisting attempts to be coerced that are imposed from without. What we need to do is recognize that attention is one of the appetites, and then we'll feed it with the best we have in living books and knowledge. But paying attention is something the child has to do on their own. We can't do it for them. It's not for us to be the fountain of all knowledge. We don't know enough. We don't speak well enough. We're too vague and random to cope with the capability of creatures who are thirsty for knowledge. Instead of pretending to be the source of their education, we must realize that books, the very best books, are the source. And we must put that resource into their hands and read them for ourselves too. So our children have this amazing ability to pay attention. And I'm sure you've seen this in your own kids. When they're so focused that nothing you say to them, like they can't even hear you. When does that happen? When they're really engrossed in something that they care about. Right? Whether that's they're playing a video game or a TV. And sadly, that's really damaged our attention spans. But if your child is like making something with Legos and they're so into it, like they're so focused on it, they don't realize what else is going on in the world. And we want to capture that attention when it comes to our school lessons. But most of what we give kids is so dry and so boring that we're actually training them in the habit of not paying attention. And we want to give them the very best book, Charlotte Mason says, because that captures attention. And I'm sure you've read a really great book, right? And you're like so engrossed in the book, and your kids are, hey, mom, are we ever like gonna get to eat today? And you're like, what? It's 5 o'clock already. Are you like going to put the book down? That was like a living, amazing story that captured your imagination, that captured your attention. And we want that for our kids. We don't need to come up with all these games and gimmicks to get their attention. If we give them really good books, they'll be like, oh, no, wait, keep reading. That's what we want. That's how we foster this habit of attention. All right. And then we want to build some other habits into our school day. So a habit of attention is so key because that's going to get them to focus. Charlotte Mason also encouraged short lessons. By having short lessons, it's easier to pay attention. Do you know the average adult attention span now is less than 30 seconds? But we're expecting our children to pay attention for 45 minutes of a grammar lesson. That's so unrealistic. Charlotte Mason had short lessons. They didn't have 45-minute lessons till they were in high school, and that's very few subjects actually. And when they're young, a lesson might only take 5 to 10 minutes. By being able to focus, be interested in it, caring about it, you're able to go through school in a shorter amount of time than having these subjects that drag on and on and on and on and on. Okay, so I wanted to mention short lessons as well. Okay, so let's move into some other foundational habits that you might want to consider building into your homeschool. So the first one is the habit of outdoor time. Charlotte Mason talks a lot about this, but we need to make it a habit. It's not just something like, oh, I hope when we have extra time, we can go do something outside. It needs to be something that is so vital. Here's what she said. This is from volume 1. It is infinitely well worth the mother's while to take some pains every day to secure in the first place that her children spend hours daily amongst rural and natural objects, and in the second place to infuse into them, or to rather cherish in them, the love of investigation, a love of nature implanted so early that it will seem to them thereafter to have been born in them, will enrich their lives with pure interests, absorbing pursuits, health, and good humor. So she says the mom has to take pains to secure outdoor time. So it might not always be easy. It might not always be pleasant. That's the thing about a habit, right? When you're first starting to build a habit, like going to the gym, it's hard. The more you do it, the easier it becomes, right? You don't have to think about waking up and brushing your teeth. You just do it. It's habitual. So we want to create this pattern of loving nature, of investigating and being curious and having wonder about God's creation and being outside. And so we build that habit again over time. So at first it might be a little painful, but eventually it will build this love of nature within your children. So looking at how can you make this a habit in your day, in your week, so that it's something that starts to happen naturally and it's not so hard to get outside. Another habit is having routines. So in the book For the Children's Sake, which if you have not read this and you're interested at all in Charlotte Mason, this is my go-to book. You must try this one. She says, routines form habits. So if you want to have good habits, you need to add routines into your homeschool day. She says, take the area of human relationships. Routines do not make the relationship, but they are the frame upon which we hang our experiences. Some families do not have a routine of eating meals together anymore. Any time goes for snacking. People rush about at 1,000 activities, any one of which could be good, but what is the sum total? Without the priority of a framework, nothing much happens. Few conversations, little time of togetherness. A family decides to read a book together whenever there's time. But invariably, there's no time. It is essential to have these basic routines. Children love routines. It frees their attention, again, this habit of attention, for the activity at hand. Later on, other routines help the child along. When planning routines, priority must be given to the most important things. The person matters. Whether it be child, husband, wife, or friend, we all need time to talk, read, relax, and work together. Our relationship with God matters. Where is the time to be found for that? I am a part of his creation. Where will I have time to get out and enjoy nature? Again, that other habit of being outside. There's too much work to be done and I am finite. I need to accept that reality and plan the time and priorities carefully. So when you are planning out your school year, think about what are the priorities for you? Do you want to build in these habits of being outside, of reading together, of spending time in God's word? Make it a routine. The more you do something, the stronger that habit will become and the easier it will be to make that happen. So as you're planning out your school day, what are the routines that can make these habits form more easily into your day? And you're not always having to make a million decisions all day about, do we do this next? Do we do that? Do we decide to go here? Do we do this? By having these routines, it eliminates a lot of that decision fatigue, which will be so helpful. And the next one is the habit of solitude, which might be something you have not thought of. And I think it's really interesting. I'm going to have to put my glasses on here because I have this quote on my phone and it's really hard to read. Bear with me 1 second here. All right. For the right use of programs, that's Charlotte Mason's programs, 2 things are necessary: solitude and independence. Okay. For the right use of the programs, 2 things are necessary: solitude and independence. Children must have these. Nursery children come off fairly well in these respects. They get time where they can wander and dream alone in the garden. But this happy state ends where schoolroom life begins. Lessons, walk, and lessons again, always in company, always having something that must be done now. Miss Mason devises the timetables, that's those short lessons I was talking about, which cover such reasonable hours as to leave time over for the solitude. But parents are often very culpable in thinking that tango, isn't that so funny? Or some other new thing must be learned as well. The much needed time for solitude is used for plans, which necessitate hurried journeys, always in the company of a responsible person who feels it's her duty to talk in an instructive way. And the thinking time, the growing time, the time in which the mind is to find food is diminished, and the child becomes restless, tiresome, irritable, disobedient. Everything that a child who is reputed to be difficult can be. The parents marvel and say, but we are giving him the best education that can be procured. We are neglecting no opportunities. Kind, generous parents, you are giving your child every opportunity but one, and that is self-development. By your generous care, you are safeguarding him from ever using his own mind, ever relying upon himself in any way. The child who at first found inference irksome later depends on it so much that he is unable to work without the constant prodding of a mentor. I believe that this is the prime reason of the oft-repeated lament of teachers and professors. Little ones are so eager, older children are less keen, adults are dull. Wow. If you want to feed your child's mind, you have to build in times of solitude into your day. Time when your children are alone with their imaginations, when you're not hurried from one thing to the next. And there's so many amazing opportunities now for homeschoolers that weren't around when I started. But it can be so easy to pack our day where we're constantly on these hurried journeys and our children don't have time to think, to be alone with their own thoughts, and to allow these ideas start to form and take root in their mind and to develop their imagination. So make sure you're leaving time for the habit of solitude in your day. So here are some questions to consider when it comes to building good habits into your homeschool. How am I fostering good habits in my own life? So we have to start with ourselves. If we're not building good habits in our own life, we are not going to be good models for our children on how to stay consistent with something, how to will ourselves to do something that we actually don't really want to do. We need to model that first for our kids. Does my homeschool routine make good habits easy? Again, routines are going to be the tracks that these habits are going to go on, and it's going to make everything so much easier in your day. And what's one habit that would bring more ease to our homeschool day? What's one thing you could start, maybe even this summer, that could be a habit that gets built that's going to make things easier come fall? And then the last one is education is a life. In saying that education is the life, the need of intellectual and moral, as well as of physical sustenance, is applied. The mind feeds on ideas. Therefore, children should have a generous curriculum. Education is a life. It is living. We want to give our kids a life-giving education. We're not just feeding their mind, but we're feeding their whole personhood, their physical body, their moral body, them as spiritual beings, right? But what does the mind actually need to grow? Are we feeding it the proper food? Charlotte Mason would say, a mind can only be fed upon ideas. We can stuff a bunch of information in there, she says, but it's like sawdust in the cogs of a machine. We're just filling our children with a bunch of information. They might look really stuffed and like they know a whole lot, but there's no depth to what they're actually learning. Only ideas can take root and be the proper food that your child's mind needs. So what do we mean by that? What's an idea? So she says an idea is more than an image or a picture. It is, so to speak, a spiritual germ, a little seed, endowed with vital force and with power that is to grow and produce after its kind. It's the very nature of an idea to grow, as the vegetable germ secretes that it lives by. So fairly implant an idea in the child's mind, and it will secrete its own food, and it will grow, and it will bear fruit, and it will inform a succession of like ideas. Charlotte Mason calls this the science of relations. These little ideas that come into our children's mind through the books that we're reading, through the art that we're looking at, through the music, through the being out and investigating out in nature. These little seeds, when they have time for solitude to grow, they will grow on their own and they will connect to other ideas. We don't have to put all the connections and make a cute little unit study where everything all goes together for our kids. Their brains are naturally going to make these connections as these ideas are growing. Those synapses are going to start connecting, and it's such a beautiful thing to watch because this is their own brains doing the hard work of digesting all this mind food that we're going to give them. So the proper nourishment of ideas. What does this mean? What does this actually look like? What are we putting in here on a regular basis? So first of all, ideas come from stories or books that are written in a narrative fashion. So even high school chemistry, believe it or not, even high school physics can be written in a narrative fashion where there's an idea, there's something that captures your imagination. It's not just a bunch of facts. She says, I think we owe it to our children to let them dig their knowledge of whatever subjects for themselves out of the book. What a child digs is his own possession. So as a teacher, we're not having to learn all the information. We're not the fountainhead of all knowledge. We're not having to digest all the material and put it together and then teach it to our kids. We are putting them in touch with real books where the authors are passionate about the subject, and those books are the ones that are teaching our children. They're the ones that are feeding their minds with all these amazing ideas. We also, and this is like a common misconception with Charlotte Mason is, oh, you just read books all day. No, children are also doing things with their hands, and ideas can come from these things as well. They're have these natural objects. They're outside, they're out in nature, they're investigating, they're exploring, they're learning these gross motor skills. They're working with handicrafts, with wood and leather and clay. They have natural objects. They're seeing the birds and the plants and the trees and these things that are outside. They're observing, they're understanding cause and effect and making conclusions about the way the world works. They're looking at art and using science things. All of these grow ideas in a child's mind. So it's not just books, but books and things. And then you need to cultivate your own mind. If you want to be pouring ideas into your children, you need ideas coming into your own mind. She says, we need not say one word about the necessity for living thought in the teacher. It is only so far as he is intellectually alive that he can be effective in the wonderful process which we glibly call education. I love this. Only as so far as he is intellectually alive. So you need to make habits of feeding your own mind with these ideas through books or things, or trying new things, learning new skills or habits, so that you are growing your own mind, and then you can pour that forth into your children. That's what makes you a living, growing human, and that will inspire them as well to follow this kind of lifelong educational path. Charlotte Mason said it is possible to pass even the university's local examinations with credit without ever having experienced that vital stir which marks the inception of an idea. And if we have succeeded in escaping this disturbing influence while we have finished our education when we leave school, we shut up our books in our minds and remain pygmies in the dark forest of our own dim world of thought and feeling. You can check off all the boxes and pass the tests and never have an idea that changes and shapes you as a person. And that is such a scary thought and such a grave defect of our modern industrialized educational system. Charlotte Mason is advocating for something extremely different. By having the atmosphere be one that fosters connection and creativity and curiosity, by having routines and habits that make learning possible, by having living ideas coming through books and things, your children will constantly have these seeds of ideas planted into their minds that will grow and shape them as full people who, as Charlotte Mason uses this word I love so much, become magnanimous citizens. She says, how large is the room upon which their feet are set? And you get to have the amazing opportunity to use those 3 tools to provide your child with an amazingly large room full of beautiful, rich, good and true ideas. If you want to get started using these tools and you're like, I have no idea how to even start, and you want to bring some truth, goodness, and beauty into your homeschool day, I have a free morning time packet. All you have to do is scan that QR code. It's called Times of Togetherness, and there's some other fun activities in there as well to help your family develop the habit in the culture of coming together and looking at scripture, listening to hymns, looking at beautiful art and poetry to grow that goodness in your hearts and minds and to fill yourself with these living ideas. So if you want to grab that, you can grab that there. I would also love to connect with you. My curriculum, A Gentle Feast, can be found at gentlefeast.com. I also have a podcast where I encourage modern homeschool moms to create a life in homeschool they love. It's called The Feast Life. You can find it on all the podcast platforms. And then we also have a free Facebook group. If you'd like to join and just learn some more about this philosophy, connect with other like-minded moms. It's a really great, wonderful group of moms in that Facebook community called the Feast Life Community. Just search for that on Facebook and you will find us. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this is helpful. I hope you'll be able to look at your homeschool for next school year and say, what kind of atmosphere am I creating? How can I use this tool of habits to make our days smoother and easier? And then what living ideas are coming forth from what I'm choosing to use in our homeschool? And am I feeding my children with the kind of rich ideas that their minds actually need to grow upon? So thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it.